I've been working on a game for the last 3 years inspired by Persona, Grandia, and Yakuza Like a Dragon to moderate levels of success and, well, failure. And because of my slow start, I've been reluctant to document anything like a devlog because I wanted to make sure what I was showing off was cool, unique, and interesting. And of course, in an unsurprising twist, I was one of the thousands of other developers who exclusively learned Unity only to find out one day that they didn't like their user base anymore and wanted to extort people into paying off what I can only assume is a private island, or more likely a history of bad investments. So even though they've rolled back a lot of these price gouging decisions, it hasn't restored a lot of the trust that was lost with their users, including myself. So naturally, I've been feeling this intense anxiety over starting again in a new engine. So what it really comes down to is Godot or Unreal Engine 5, the grassroots underdog versus the big man on campus. Knowing I'd be working on this for another 2 to 4 years, I figured I shouldn't take this decision lightly. So here I am, sitting in a state of decision-making paralysis. That was until the day of writing this script when I saw a devlog by a user named Solomon Gumball and their journey with Unreal Engine. Their videos are great, you should check them out. That being said, one of the more daunting things about Unreal Engine is the majority of the projects I've seen made with it are essentially tech demos to try and replicate AAA releases. On the opposite end, Godot seems to be primarily used as a sort of game jam Swiss Army knife and is constantly being updated. I was worried this continual state of flux with the engine would eventually run me into issues that I couldn't get out of. Obvious disclaimer, I don't have years of experience with either of these engines, so I could be being a bit, reductive. I made a pros and cons list, and of course, got overwhelmed, so I booted up Batman Arkham Knight to relieve my stress. Grand Theft Batman. A game where somehow electrocuting rioters you run into with the Batmobile suddenly negates the probable quadriplegia or loss of life from a car accident. Sublime. Before we resume talking about my game, let's rewind things a bit and talk about Layer 1, the past. I've been trying to make a video game since I was about 11. Back in grade school, I was obsessed with the idea of making a game for my classmates that everyone would want to play. Of course, I had no idea how games were made, so I just grabbed my trusty, dull, number 2 pencil and my lined Hilroy exercise book and scribbled some art worthy of an art YouTuber's bullying. Oh, whoops, I'm sorry, constructive criticism. Anyways, I had just played the Mega Man Battle Network series, and I started drawing my classmates' NetNavis, the digital virtual companions of the characters in the game, naming them things like Lacrosse Man or Skateboard Man, based on the thing they liked most. Obviously, this didn't last long, as everyone moved on to their next fascination, and this is when I learned about the colorful, grotesque, and radical world of anime. Inuyasha, Gundam Seed, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Power Stone, Full Metal Alchemist, The GOAT, Hellsing. These shows made my synapses explode like they were being hit by Gohan's Kamehameha against Cell in that one episode. And it made me, what's the nicer word for, a loser?
You're a loser!
Anyways, it wasn't exclusively anime. I also fell in love with JRPGs, specifically Final Fantasy VII, Grandia 3, and the incredibly underrated 102 Dalmatians, Puppies to the Rescue. It wasn't until I was in college that I finally discovered RPG Maker. I'm going to make a game, I said. So I made a battle system and one whole cutscene. And then I forgot about it. So then I found Game Maker after playing Area of Sorrow for the 85th time, and I made a gray box level. And then I forgot about it. Then I said, I want to make Dark Souls. And then I played Dark Souls 3 and realized that would require the giant gigabrain of Hidetaka Miyazaki and his entire team of expert programmers, artists, and animators. So I waited, and I waited, until I played a game that changed my life. 2. Persona 5 Royal and Persona 3 Fez, baby! Woo! These games made me realize why I liked making video games in the first place. Persona 5 had this slick Inception meets Lupin the Third meets Pokemon feel that made me want to just bogey. Then I played P3 Fez, which gave me very intense feelings about death and existence, and made me realize we're all dying and, oh look, there's a dog. That's neat. My mind was made up. I was gonna make a game that had the feeling I got from these two games mixed with all the aforementioned anime and JRPGs that I loved as a teenager. A dot hack sign meets Trails of Cold Steel, if you will. Yeah, I'm one of the 5 people who remembers dot hack sign and thinks it's more complex and interesting than 85% of the anime that's come out in the last 20 years. Please don't come to my house and burn it down. I spent the next year drafting a story and working on the mechanics. The game would star a selectable protagonist of 3 visually distinct gender presentations referred to as player. You'll be able to name them in the full game. Who finds themselves thrust into the underbelly of government corruption, a series of mass disappearances, and a strange digital world known as the Cage. The game is split into weeks where the player is given various story tasks to prepare for a boss fight with their current opponent and optional hangouts with their companions to level up their abilities and maybe even find love. Each night you have the option to dive into the Cage system, which is an ever-changing dungeon filled with lost souls known as cagelings. Getting to the center of the dungeon gives you the necessary clues you need to defeat the boss. However, you can optionally not complete the dungeon and fight them without knowing their gimmick. I'm thinking of making this optional, so there's more flexibility for players with the difficulty as they go along, and will give routing options for speedrunners. I want to make hangouts more than just little story chunks, and perhaps give every character a microgame based on what you might do when you hang out. I'm hoping this will give me more experience completing small projects before tackling the big parts. The game takes place in a casino where you and your teammates work, and you gather information on the rich patrons who may be involved in the mass disappearances around the country. During Monday to Friday, you work in the casino during the evening slot and choose one casino game to play and gather money for items and weapons. During the late night slot, you have the option to decompress with your teammates or dive into the cage and do some dungeon crawling. It will be important to juggle both, as not all of your team's abilities will be able to be leveled just by grinding. Okay, so you've gotten this far in the video, so I know what you're probably wondering.
What's the battle system going to be like? It's a JRPG after all.
Don't worry, I got you. I have the system mapped in Excel currently, but I'm going to wait to explain it until the next devlog. To go over it in the briefest way possible, it's based on the time/counter mechanics of Grandia with a strong emphasis on action economy control through status effects. And yes, it is stat allocation and custom movesets, so all you power gamers can have your optimal loadouts for every fight. But really, the biggest thing I'm trying to establish with this system is flexibility.
Layer 3, C++ Crusaders.
So here I am. 2 years after learning how to draw, okay. 1 year after learning how to 3D model, texture paint, rig, and animate, competently, with 2 chapters of my script done and so much more to do. But I'm ready to make something cool. Honestly, this isn't my dream game.
Our dream game would probably be a fighting game with RPG mechanics, tying the whole story together with also like Yakuza style minigames, because I'm one of those weird people that likes dumb little phone games like Minesweeper and shit.
Anyways, I digress. But it's something I have wanted to make since I was a kid, and I'm going to get as far as I can. RPGs are often slated as a thing you shouldn't make as your first game because they're long and hard. But I don't know, they've always caught my attention, whether it was the heart-pounding music, or the emotional moments, or just the, tornado, firestorm, mega blizzard attacks,
Primo stuff.
Before the announcement when I was working in Unity, I had a pretty basic movement and attack controller, so I'm currently porting that over and I'm hoping by December to have something at least shareable that's more fully realized. I've also completed most of the 3D assets for the first chapter and the UI mockups, so my main focus now is learning how to use the engine I proceed with and getting my coding skills locked in. I don't have any big eye-opening pieces of advice for y'all, but I guess I want to leave you with this. If you have something you want to do, don't tell yourself you can't do it. If something captures your mind and gives you that sweet, sweet brain rot, you gotta let it blossom. Don't give up. Thanks for watching. Oh, before I go, I should introduce myself. I'm Demidevlog. I'm a composer and game developer who, besides working on this game, I also compose for games such as They Speak from the Abyss, Dreadweight, and Hyperspace Digital Retrograde. Follow me on Twitter or X or whatever it's called next week after somebody has another midlife crisis. Or join my Discord. Link is in the description. And if you like this video, please feel free to subscribe, like, or comment and tell me what you think. Anyways, as for now,
We await your return, warrior.